and you're like, oh, that's gold. But then you put it with another gold one, and it's like, all of a sudden, oh, wow, no, this is not gold at all. Like, you need a comparison to really understand the difference. If you don't know any better, you just see what you see, you think 50 mil is great. But when you start to look at the difference of what it does, I just personally appreciate the compression of a longer focal length. And I think most people prefer themselves with a longer focal length, having given the choice. But I would say, like for me personally, I would probably never do well, in fact, I don't think I've ever done in my career a shot of a Head and Shoulders with 50 mil. Something like that. It would be something that's a bit wider, more people in the frame, photojournalistic, something. 70 mil is sort of about my limit if I photograph Head and Shoulders. 105 is looking really good too, but you can see that the very, very, very subtle differences. What I want you to notice, look at the nose, how much bigger it looks here, and look how much smaller it looks here. I'm yet to meet a person who wants to have their nose look bigger than it actually is. So I want you to know that ears disappear when you go to the wider focal length. Noses look smaller as you go to a longer focal length as well. Ears and of course eyes, they look bigger here and they look smaller there. And of course, different parts of the face will look bigger and rounder on the edges, like the forehead, and then it looks more in proportion here. You might say, well, what does my own eyes look at? Or what if God could put a focal length on the eyeballs, what would it be? It's actually about 50 mil. 50 mil is the closest to what we see with our own two eyes. That's why you have many photojournalists that actually stick with 50 mil, because it's more realistic through their eyes, I guess, as a witness to different things. But so I want you to do this, if you get a chance, just photograph the same subject, do this for yourself with your lenses, and you'll understand basically what happens. What I want to do now is I want to show you some characteristics of different photographs in these different focal lengths and give you some little tips and tricks of what to look out for. Now, when you're photographing at 14 mil, so short of having a fisheye lens, the 14 mil is going to be like not too fishy, not too distorted, but you sort of want to be careful of how this works. Do you notice how I've got the bride somewhat in the center of this frame? The stairs and the railing can be distorted. In this case, you can see very clearly that this window is distorted. I actually quite like it. I'm not a big fan of distortion, but I think in this context, it adds to the grandeur of this photograph, which is part of the charm of it. So I'm okay with, obviously, the bride being in the middle. I like the fact that we've got this coming out that makes it look larger than life, and now she's blending into the environment. So it works really well. Now, funnily enough, this next photograph, I was right in this corner shooting back this way, and I get this shot. Again, I have my couple in the middle of the frame, because you can't tell whether this is actual lens distortion or whether this is the distortion of just the fact that the railings were curved, because that's the natural nature of them. There's actually a painted fresco on the ceiling, so that's that, but just want to let you know. So remember too, just if you're photographing people with a 14 mil lens, you can't have them on the corner of the frame. When I want something like that, for example, there could be a shot where I'm photographing a bride and groom with a big sky in the background, dramatic sky, they're leaning towards the camera, I'm lying on the ground, I'm shooting upwards, then I might have the veil in the corner, or the veil softening the arm of the bride, because what will happen is, if you have an elbow on the corner of a frame that's really wide angle, the elbow will just pop out and just look huge and look ridiculous. So the veil will soften that. Or put the guy on the corner, because a black suit's a black suit, it's going to look, you're not going to look too distorted. In this case, she's perfectly in the middle. I've got the bottom of my frame parallel to this strong horizontal line, so I get away with it, and it works well. So again, 14 mil, this looks a bit distorted, but I've hidden the distortion of the bride and the groom behind that place card there, the what do you call it? A-board or whatever. This is actually in Vegas, so it was deliberately, as a deliberately kitsch wedding, and it was just fun that we did stuff like this. But again, the distortion is not there anymore, and it works. So 24 mil gives us a bit more breathing space. And of course, there's perspective control that you can do in post-production and all those different things, and that's great. But I love the fact that we can do this. And 24 mil is a nice little well-rounded. That's sort of considered like your standard wide angle focal length that works well. So love that. Beautiful wide angle lens. And again, I try to keep my subject matter in the middle of the frame so it works well. Remember how I told you about keeping a groom maybe on the side of the frame, even though it's 24mm, not as distorted as a 14mm, I find that actually works a bit better. Here I've got off-camera flash. I expose for the sky. I've got tourists everywhere, so I lie on the ground and shoot upwards. I get rid of the tourists. I illuminate them both. Beautiful catch lights in the eyes. She was quite cold. That gave me the idea of the pose. I put the jacket around and there it is. So this is what I was telling you about. So I've got the comparative. I've got the groom on the corner of the frame. You can't tell it's distorted. And now I've got the bride on a 24mm shot, but she's got so much tulle and veil there, you can't really see the distortion. And yes, it's more forgiving than the 14mm that we discussed. But again, 28mm, it just works well. You know, just when in doubt, keep your subject matter in the middle of the frame. Someone will tell you, well, no, you have to photograph the rule of thirds and it can't be centered. You can do whatever the hell you want as long as it looks good and as long as it suits the subject matter of what you're doing. 50mm gives us more of the impression of, again, of what we look. It's sort of like a compression that we're used to seeing with our own two eyes. This was actually the exact same scene as that previous shot that I showed you with off-camera flash. But you can see all the crap that I had to deal with. At the very least, I exposed for the background. They were in shadow. I had off-camera flash, and that's how I took this shot as well. You know, 50mm works. It works well. It is something that I see we see all the time. That's why I don't use a 50mm a lot, because I'm bored of it. I was born with it. I'm on this earth for 46 years. I'm sick of seeing it. I prefer the longer focal lengths. Now I'm starting to get into the range of what I actually prefer the most. You know, being able to get to a 70mm where I've got a bit of negative space and I don't get any distortion on the side. Being able to go closer at 85mm at 1.4. Now I'm getting this beautiful compression. At 1.4, I'm photographing her. There's a little sliver in focus and it just works really beautifully. Then I go the 85mm 1.4, and again, no distortion. I've got nice compression. The facial features don't look distorted in any kind of a way. I'm not getting a bigger nose or a bigger ears or whatever. It's just, it feels prettier. There's a beauty to that focal length and beyond, which is what I absolutely love. So in this case, of course, I just quickly photographed her horizontally and I changed my angle and I changed my orientation and then bang, I got the vertical shot. And then 90mm, you can compress a lot of what you've got in front of you. And when I say compress, I'm narrowing my field of view and I can shorten lengths. And that's the way you can make the moon, for example. Like you look up at the sky and you see the moon and it's so small, but then you use a long focal length and you have it contrasting with something in the foreground. All of a sudden, the scale of it with what's in the foreground can look sort of just massive. So it's one of those things where you just have to understand what your lens is doing, how it compresses, how you can isolate the beauty of whomever or whatever you're photographing, and it works. And again, now we're coming a bit closer. We're going to 90mm. We're going to 105, and I can crop in close. I can use my macro lens. And I love the fact that we've got her eyes and her lips on the same plane and everything else is softer, because her nose, as you can see, is quite a prominent part of the photograph. But because it's out of focus, you sort of don't pay attention to it. But the 105 is just such a beautiful lens. And again, there are lenses in other camera systems that have macro attached to it, but maybe not at the 100 or the 105 mark. You just got to work out what you like, what you appreciate, and what works for you. But it's such a beautiful lens. So take your time, learn your focal length. Just because I prefer this kind of a range doesn't mean you have to. We all have a different style, and there's many people that have actually popularized their style by shooting it all with this kind of a lens. And that's good. I would just say don't overthink it. Just use what you feel is right for what you're trying to say, and that'll work. Again, this one, I would much rather stand right back, compress the background, than going too close and having to shoot wide. You just get a totally different feeling from the shot. See, if I went really close and wide, the background's going to look different. I'm going to have a bit more space on the left and the right, whereas now I pull back, I tighten everything up, and then I shorten the length of of the foreground to the background, the middle ground, and it works really well. I love this shot. This is sort of, I was on an opposing boat. It just looks like James Bond's about to freaking get married. He's on a river, and then that was it. But it's so beautiful to be able to tighten up everything. There is so much distraction in life, let alone in what we see and what we view through our cameras. And I remember famously, I guess famously, within our small circle of workshop students, people were talking about how I like to crop, and I'm a big lover of cropping, and how cropping can actually really create some amazing looks and feels and really differentiate you from the person next to you. And one of my students basically, I think we did a bit of a mashup of the workshop, and said, you know, you should just crop the crap out, and then all you are left with is beauty. And that's the same with photography, and the same thing with life. And it was just a fun little metaphor for life, let alone what we do in camera. This is 150 mil. It's such a beautiful compression. It tightens everything up, like I said. Yes, we could go further. We could go to 400 mil, 600 mil, but then you're getting this big glass, big camera cases, and great for sports photographers, not so great for, say, portrait or wedding or photographers, because it's a little bit unrealistic. This next shot is the last one I'm going to show you. This is at 200 mil. I thought I'd show you this because it's a really unique photograph. I was walking with this particular groom, and as we're walking, I'm looking at him, and I just focus beyond him, and I see the reflection of his silhouetted figure in the window. And then as he was doing that, the bride was walking by, and I'm like, man, I've got an idea. So I thought, if he was elevated slightly, so I asked for a stepladder, which they found. If he was elevated slightly and I scooched down, I could photograph a clean silhouette against the overcast sky and the reflection. So I do that. But then I thought, wouldn't it be cool to merge the bride right within his profile, and it gives us an in-camera multiple exposure, an in-camera montage effect, but no multiple exposure, no composite or composite, and we get this shot. So I compress the background. It's 200 mil, a beautiful metaphor for two becoming one, and I get this beautiful shot literally out of nothing. So gear certainly is important, but gear is only tools. It's certainly, if you've learned from me, you'll know that it's more about the relationships that you create. It's more about how you connect with your clients. The gear is important. It's important to know the gear, but just know that way beyond that, that no one's going to connect with you while you've got your head buried into your camera. Yes, there's times where we have to look into our cameras or the viewfinder at the back of the camera to see the exposure or see what's worked and what's not. But once you get that test shot out of the way, connect, have some fun, and go for it. Now, let's talk specifically about weddings. I want to talk about what we call a day before a wedding ritual. What do you do a day before the wedding when it comes to gear? Well, there's many, many things, and you have to make it, it's almost like this is just a ritual that doesn't change. I mean, I've even suggested to some people who forget these things, like get a laminated piece of paper with all the things that you do for a wedding, get yourself a whiteboard marker, and then you just literally tick off on this laminated letter-sized piece of paper with everything written down. And why whiteboard? Because you can tick it off, you can wipe it, use it again the following week. What do we do a day before the wedding? Well, there's many, many things, but I wanted to bring attention to probably the most important. First of all, don't assume that your cameras work because you could have photographed a wedding interstate. It could have simply been put in your bag, and you don't think about it because you literally just photographed last week and the camera worked. You want to make sure that I call them your vital signs, work. Make sure that you can change your aperture, your f-stop, your ISO. Make sure your focusing works. All these different things, you want to make sure that your cameras are working flawlessly. I want you to also check your lenses. Of course, I just mentioned that about the sharpness. I want you to focus on your hand, focus on a tree behind you. Like, you are using all the elements of what your systems have. I want you to time sync all your cameras. Please don't get into a position where you don't think about the time, you don't thinking about putting your date on each camera to match, and then you've got 3 or 4 photographers jumping around and photographing, and you think, well, how on earth am I going to sync all these photographs after the fact? Now, there are ways of doing that after the fact, easier than manually sorting them in a program. But make your life easier. The day before the wedding, all the cameras that you're using for the wedding, I want you to make sure that they're on a certain time zone, they're on an exact same date, and they're exact same time. And then you basically set the times and you press OK on all those buttons simultaneously. Make sure that your memory cards are formatted and load them into the camera, and of course including extra memory. I want your routine to be exactly what it is every single time you photograph a wedding. In other words, you photograph a wedding, you put your cards a certain way once they've been used into your case. If you're going to 7-Eleven and buy a drink after the wedding at midnight, do not leave your cards in your camera bag in your car unattended. If your car gets stolen, you can replace the car, you can replace the gear, you cannot replace those photographs. So get that hard case that you can literally drive over, you know those ones that I'm talking about, right? And put them in your pocket and no one can touch it. Even if you're photographing a wedding and you have used multiple cards, put those used cards in your camera, in your case, put them on your person. Do not let those cards out of your sight for the rest of the day. That's going to be really, really important for you. Obviously check the batteries for all your devices. Yes, you can buy disposable batteries for your speed lights and things like that, but of course you can buy rechargeable ones. Look for the highest milliamp of your batteries, and of course you get as much juice out of it as possible, and make sure that you don't lose a lot of power if you have to, of course, some batteries you have to discharge before you recharge. Some are actually known for the fact that you can actually charge them even if they're half charged and they don't affect the life of the battery. Now, certainly no batteries last forever, but do your homework on the best ones to use there as well. And of course, make sure you have all the appropriate gear for the needs of the event that you're shooting. For example, you might be shooting at a venue that has very, very dark walls, dark ceilings, or red walls or blue ceilings, and you might need some off-camera flash on a wedding day. Well, you need light stands. You may need an extra strobe. You might need a reflector holder, as in, an arm with a stand. Like, you've got to go through a checklist of realistically, what do I need for this wedding? What I'm saying goes without saying, but I'm saying it anyway because I have fallen into the trap where I've gone to a wedding and I didn't have enough memory cards. I literally had to go to a camera shop and buy a memory card because I was stupid enough to think, well, this wedding is 2,000 shots are more than enough. And all of a sudden, I go to the bride's house and there's some ritual that requires another 300 shots, and I'm like, I haven't got those at all. So, technically speaking, the ritual is what we're talking about, that you need to go through all of these things, pack everything nicely, get everything ready to rock. What I personally do, I also make sure my clothes are all set. So in other words, buy yourself some comfortable shoes. There's many brands out there that you have like a sneaker bottom, as in you have shoes that are very comfortable, but have a spongy feel, but have a sneaker bottom that's black. So don't get a sneaker bottom that's white and wear sneakers on a wedding day, but you have like a brand like your Johnson & Murphy, Cole Haan, those kind of brands that basically have good-looking shoes but have a soft rubber sole so you're comfortable and you don't wear your feet out on a wedding day. Make sure that you basically have your everything from your shirts and pants and shoes and all that kind of stuff, underwear, like everything ready to rock. Don't assume it's going to be perfectly good weather the whole night or day, whatever it may be, so get yourself a jacket, all that kind of stuff. Food. In Australia we call them an esky. It's like a little cooler, a mini cooler. When I was shooting weddings frequently, as in every Saturday, Sunday, I was shooting 100 weddings. I mean, I brought it down to a science. I made sure I had sandwiches. I made sure I had snacks, fruit, nuts, drinks, you name it, water. I would have aspirin or Advil, whatever the brand is in your country. You basically account for headaches. You account for dehydration. You account for all these things. Also, you might want to have like a little pair of scissors, or you might want to have a sewing kit. There's going to be things that happen on the wedding day, and all of a sudden you'd be a hero if you bring these things out on a wedding day as well. If you want to be nice and kind as well, buy a whole bunch of candy or cookies or whatever for the bridal party. You'll make best friends very, very quickly. You might even want to buy some alcohol with some shot glasses. You will be best friends with the bridal party as well. I will often do things like that on wedding days as well. Also, don't assume that everything that you've prearranged is actually happening on the wedding day. In other words, a month before the wedding, you'll have a pre-wedding meeting, and there you'll discuss all the things that'll happen on the wedding day. What time you'll get to the groom's house, what time you get to the bride's house, what time is the ceremony, where is the ceremony, the location of where they're getting ready. Like, in other words, you'll confirm scheduling times, locations, rituals, dynamics, relationships. Are the parents, grandparents with us? Hashtag, are they still alive? Are they divorced? Are they married? Are they on speaking terms? There's all these things that you have to know. But what I want you to do is ring up the bride, ring up the groom. Say, hey, can't wait to photograph your wedding tomorrow. Just want to confirm the place where you're getting married. I want to confirm the reception. I want to confirm where you're getting ready. Now, it could just be, which has happened to me in the past, that the bride has changed where she's getting ready from the house, where she was born and raised, to a hotel. She didn't tell you. She took it for granted. So there you are going up to the house. No one's there. What's going on? And then you're running late. So don't take anything for granted. Check everything. And I'm telling you, it'll just make for a relaxed day. We have enough pressure as it is, as wedding photographers, to photograph on a wedding day where all these things are happening beyond our control. What we can control, we should. Prepare for the, expect the best, prepare for the worst. But just know that there'll be pressures on the day that you can't control. But that's what I want, is I want control back. I don't want me to be the problem. I don't want my gear to be the problem. I don't want my lack of preparation to be the problem. If there is an issue, it's beyond my control, but I will do my best to actually navigate it on the wedding day. Hope that gives you a really good sense of the minimum gear that we need for a wedding. The minimum, I'd say, the next level where this is a well-rounded perspective of what might be good for a wedding scenario as well. And also understanding compression and what lens choice will do for a particular photograph, and maybe some of the mistakes that I had made, hopefully you don't have to make. And also really, as we just mentioned before, is understanding that the day before the wedding, make sure you don't go out, you don't get crazy drunk, you know, that you get to bed a certain sort of hour. Like, these are just responsible things that you basically want to do. So it just becomes part of the culture of what you do. And then you can go in there, you know what to expect, your body sort of knows what to expect, you're mentally, physically, gear-wise, everything is set to go. You go out there, you kick some butt, and then you go back to bed, you put your head on the pillow, and you say to yourself, you know what? I laid it all out on the table. I did the best that I could. So do your homework. Know what's best for the kind of weddings that you actually photograph. Do your homework with the kind of gear that will suit you, of course. Maybe rent before you buy, and once you've got it, protect it. Make sure you insure your camera gear. That's a really important one. And I wish you good luck, strength, have some fun, and remember, it's more about what you say and how you say it, more than the gear that you use. But enjoy.